Thank you very much to all of you for joining us today's workshop lecture. So this is actually my second time that I'll be sharing or what I learned or what I know with MycoAsia. So allow me to share my presentation now. Today I was tasked to deliver a short lecture on ethics in research, and I'll try to give as much information that I can share with you based on my own experiences in doing research in the past years. As I mentioned, I'm affiliated with the University of Santo Tomas in Manila, Philippines. But currently, I'm based in Germany since my family is here for a while, so I'm here. So we are in a different time zone. So I'm 9 o'clock in the morning here. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you, depending on your time zone. Let me begin my talk. I think in 2020, I think you're familiar. We had the experience a global health crisis. This is probably the most recent global health crisis that we experienced. So with millions of deaths, many economies down, airlines and are grounded, airports are completely empty. Okay, and of course there are people who are trying to know what happened, when it started, where it started. Okay, and there were of course reports saying that this took place because there was uh, a leak on of the viruses from one of the laboratories in Wuhan, China, where the pandemic occurred. Obviously, this is just one of the what we call conspiracy theories that people are trying to say to justify or at least to explain the origin of the COVID-19 pandemic. The World Health Organization um, issued a statement that this supposed to be leak of viruses from the lab is an extremely unlikely event, right? There are also scientists who condemn these rumors and conspiracy theories about the origin of the coronavirus outbreak. But of course, there are still some speculations given the fact in Wuhan, China, there is a laboratory that deals with viruses. Okay, they've been isolating viruses from animals, including bats. While we're not going to talk about this specific scenario, I just want you to think about this and probably reflect on this particular question. If you know that the research that you are doing would have a risk in the society, would you consider still doing this kind of project? So this is, I think, some of the question, or one of the questions that we should always put into our mind as a researcher. But of course, it's not only limited to this. So we have also what we call personalized medicine. It's something that is gaining popularity right now, given the fact that if you have personalized medicine, you're expecting to have a more improved treatment, faster recovery, and they say it's less expensive than the traditional or conventional medicine. However, there's also a different side of this. If you want to do or if you want to be involved in personalized medicine, this would mean providing more information about yourself. Okay, so there's of course the issue of privacy, and if people or if employers, for example, get information about those items that you provided, this may also lead to possible discrimination. Okay. Then I think you probably heard or read about retractions from retraction of journal articles. For example, this is a news item, okay, reporting a retraction on a paper published in PLOS Biology in 2011. Okay, so while the authors claim that the results that they presented were accurate, except that they miss or they use wrong plots in their figures, which then resulted in the duplication of the figures. Nevertheless, the authors and the journals have to retract this specific publication. So when it's retracted, then it's no longer part of what we call accepted published papers in journals. There is a paper, or there is a report published in Science, and we actually found out that there is a lot of retracted papers over the years. Okay, and this number of retractions increased from less than 100 in 2000 to nearly 1,000 in 2014. Okay, and in that article, they are saying that about 4 of every 10,000 papers are actually retracted. So later I will be sharing with you the slides that I prepared, and you can then copy all these links and go to the articles and read them yourselves. There is a database now, which we call retraction database, and you can actually find information here on journals that are retracted. So I tried using this database. I type in my country, the Philippines, and I found out that there are 40 items, okay, 40 publications that were retracted. You will see here the title of the publications, the journals where it was published, the reason why it was retracted, the authors, and all other information. Okay. In the article that I mentioned in Science, they use this retraction database to understand the extent of retractions in the scientific community. Okay, and in one of their figures, they showed here the countries with the highest retraction rate. So Iran ranked the first with more than with 14 papers retracted per 10,000 papers published. Okay, so you have Romania, Singapore, India, Malaysia, South Korea, China, Turkey, South Africa, even the Netherlands. And you will see here that the retraction would come from any countries, whether you are a developing country or a well-developed country. It happens everywhere. Okay, so it's a general phenomenon that takes place within the scientific community. But take note that these retractions does not necessarily mean scientific misbehavior. In fact, in the article, they stated that only 40% of the retraction notices did not mention any fraud or any kind of misconduct. And many of these retractions were because of errors, issues with reproducibility, or any other issues in research or ethical concerns. Okay, and that is the reason why these papers were retracted. So it's not about the validity of the findings, but there are, of course, some issues that they pointed out the reason as a reason why these papers have to be retracted. Retraction is not, happens with ordinary researchers. It could happen even with Nobel Prize winners. So here is Frances Arnold, a recipient of the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2018, and she has to retract one of their papers, okay, in 2020. This is because they realized that the study that they published is actually not reproducible. And when they further investigated, they found some missing entries, missing raw data, and for that reason, they could not repeat anymore the experiment. And because of that, they have to retract the paper. Okay? Of course, you probably have encountered also news articles or news articles about researchers peaking experiments. So, for example, in this article in 2016, they reported a scientist who peaked more than 70 experiments that he or she conducted. So this happens in the U.S. And in the article in Science, they also reported that more than 50%, okay, of the retracted papers were retracted because of frauds and other scientific misconduct. In another news article here, the retraction occurred not because of mistakes in experiments, but because of the failure of the scientists to follow proper procedures. So they uh, reported that the scientists involved in this project did not submit their protocols for ethical review, which is required for those who are doing research in involving humans. Okay, and for that reasons, they have to retract the publications. Now, what I've shown you are some examples of issues that are related to ethics in research. So what is ethics? Okay, so basically it's a system of self-imposed scientific control. So when I say self-imposed, uh, we as scientists impose these ethical guidelines on ourselves. All right, uh, and these are based on ethical codes or ethics commissions. Okay, ethical codes are published by institutions. Okay, for example, there is a code of conduct for responsible research, which was published by the World Health Organization. The U.S. National Academy of Sciences also published their code of conduct, which governs, of course, the scientists in the U.S. There are also research institutions which publishes their own code of conduct for researchers. And in the Philippines, our Department of Science and Technology, through an administrative order, published a code of conduct and ethical standards. Now, while this code of conduct and ethical standards covered officials and employees of the government who are involved in science and technology, uh, this could still serve as a baseline information, all right, for setting up code of conduct and ethical standards within your institutions. Another source of this ethical code of conduct would be the Ethics Commission. So in the Philippines, we also have a National Ethics Committee made up of several ethics board, okay, or bodies like the National Bioethics Advisory Committee, National Transplant Ethics Committee, and our Philippine Genome Center. Basically, this ethics committee, National Ethics Committee, aims to promote ethical review in terms of research that are related to health. Okay. But aside from these local or national guidelines, there are, of course, universal guidelines that tries to provide support on responsible research with humans. For example, we have the Declaration of Helsinki, or the Helsinki Declaration, which outlines the principles, ethical principles for medical research involving human subjects. This was adopted in 1964 in Helsinki. And up to date, there are several annotations of this. Okay, the most recent one happens in 2013. And if you want to learn more about this declaration, you can go to the websites of the World Medical Association. The World Health Organization manual defined responsible research with humans as any activity. So whether it's a social science activity, biomedical, behavioral, or even epidemiological studies, okay? As long as you will be collecting and analyzing data, all right? And the purpose of this data is to either generate a knowledge, or solve a problem. And in this data, human beings are either exposed to manipulation, intervention, or even observation. This research would require, of course, getting information about the individual, all right? Whether it will be tissues, blood samples from the individual, or simply information, personal information about these individuals. Therefore, data privacy is very important aspect in human-related research. And there's also a need to create what we call an informed consent, okay? And in this informed consent, you need to provide information about why the study is conducted, how the study will be conducted, who or what agency is supporting your research, any possible conflicts, your institutions, any risk associated with the research. Okay, and there's also this item where the participants of this human-related research can can withdraw from being part of this particular research. Now, why do we have this informed consent form? This actually came out because of an early studies conducted in the US. Okay, in the 1930s, they had what we call the Tuskegee syphilis study. Okay, so this is published in CDC, Central for Disease Control, and you can read more about this Tuskegee syphilis study. But to give you a brief idea, so it happens in 1930s, conducted by the Tuskegee Institute. And the idea here, or the purpose of this project, is to record the natural history of syphilis, okay, among the African Americans. Okay, so they enlisted about 600 African American males. Half of them have, or more than half of them have syphilis. Others do not. Okay. However, the study was not was conducted in the absence of an informed consent. The researchers simply told the participants that they will be treated for bad blood, which is a local term they used there at the time, which covers any other diseases. But they realized, or they found out later, that there was no proper treatment provided, okay, to the participants. Instead, they were just given pre-medical exams, pre-meals, and in some cases, they were given viral assistance. Okay. The men agreed freely to participate, be examined, to be treated. However, they were misled. Okay, they were not given again information about how or why the project is conducted. They were not provided any treatment for the disease, even though at that time penicillin became available. Okay, and the investigators also found out that the participants were not given an options to quit the study. Okay, during the implementation of the project. So because of this, there was a need now to have this prior informed consent, allowing, of course, the participants of your research projects to know more about the information in your project. At the same time, giving them also the opportunity to quit if they feel that they don't like anymore to participate in your study. Then there's also another experiment called the standard prison experiment. So you can again read more about this experiment in this web link. In this experiment, it's a psychological study conducted in Stanford University. So what happened here is that they converted a basement in the university into a prison cell, and then they invited university or college students to participate. Okay, so they zero in on participants. Okay, and they divided these participants into two groups. One will be serving as prison guards, and the other will be serving as prisoners. So the goal of this experiment is to find out whether the behavior, okay, in prisons are due to the inherent personality of the individual or because of the environment where they're in. Okay, so all the participants are obviously not do not have any crimes, but they were treated like that. So they were arrested at home, brought by the police into the prison cell in the university, and then the guards, or those who were pretending or playing the role of the guards, would wear uniforms, would wear sunglasses so that they would not have any contact with the prisoners, or the prisoner participants. The prisoner participants were also given numbers, and they were not allowed to use their own name, and they can only speak or identify themselves based on their prison number. And the experiment should last for 2 weeks. Okay, but in early days of the experiment, it became chaotic. The prisons, uh, the prisoner participants had experienced abuses from the prison guards. Okay, so they have to terminate early the experiments. There were incidents here wherein one of the participants would not identify himself by his name, but he would already identify himself by his prisoner number. Okay, so this is again an example that happens many years ago that laid out the foundation of a stricter guidelines on research or experiments dealing with humans. And now, if you're going to submit papers for publications, and if you are doing or using human subjects or even animals, you need to provide them with permits, or in this case, if humans, you need to provide them with information regarding the prior informed consent. Okay, and these are highly regulated by the agencies in your country, okay, or even within your institutions. And these are a requirement now if you are publishing research related to humans or even animals. But of course, there are researches that are not that involves other aspects, for example, involving nature and environment. And there are also guidelines that tries to help or provide code of conduct in doing this kind of research. For example, we have the Kyoto Protocol, which deals with research on climate change. And we have the CBD, the Convention on Biological Diversity, which aims to protect the ecosystems from biological exploitation. And it also provides information on benefit sharing between the researchers or the countries where the biological diversity was derived. And these guidelines are very important. Okay, for example, there is this article that was recently retracted. They discovered a new species, okay, of insect in Borneo. However, the scientists or the authors who made the discovery has to retract the paper simply because the collection permit that they got from the center where they conducted the study did not provide permit for them to publish this data. Okay, uh, the authors were communicating with the institutions regarding the permit to publish the information, but the institution could not provide them, and for that reason, they have to retract the paper. So there's nothing wrong with the experiment, okay? So the accuracy of the experiment, but the issue now lies on the permit, the collection permit. And for this reason, you will now imagine they discovered new species, and now you cannot consider this species to be new because they are no longer a valid publication because of the retraction. Now, if you're working with animals, there is also what we call the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. So I don't know if in your institution you have this, but in our university, we have an institutional committee focusing on animal use. Okay, they govern on how you should use animals, okay, in your research, and not only in research but also in teaching. Okay, this means that you cannot use as many animal models as you want in your research. The IACUC, as we call it, also try to implement these three guidelines: replacement, reduction, or refinement. What do we mean by this? Replacement means that if you can think of an experiment that will replace the use of animal models, then it's better to use that particular experiment. For example, you are um, doing animal models, okay, and you can do your assays with tissues, with cell lines, then and you will get the same results. Then it's better to use cell line cultures in your experiment than your animal models. Reduction means that, okay, before you will say, they will say, okay, in order for your project to be statistically valid, you need to have 100 mice, all right, at least 100 mice, for example. This is just an example, right? But now, the IACUC will say, no, you don't need that. You can probably come up with the same results, okay, using only 20 mice. Okay, so that's what we mean by reduction. Refinement is when you can gather more information from uh, the model that you have. So rather than coming up with several experiments, okay, with different sets of animals, you can actually just work with one set of animals to gather information from all those particular experiments that you intend to do. All right. And then there is now an issue, or researchers what we call dual use technology. So basically, these are legitimate research studies. However, their output or their process or methods could either provide benefits or could harm the society. So example of this dual use technology would be like supercomputers. So if you're doing research on supercomputers, obviously you see the benefits of that, okay? But having a high-speed computer could also be used for cybercrime. Or you're doing research on signal analyzer, uh, you see the benefits of it, but it could also be used for military warfare, okay? Or you're doing research on fermentation, and this could lead to the creation of what we call biological weapons or bioweapons. So for example, I've seen this paper on in the Journal of Applied Microbiology, where they detailed the isolation of Bacillus anthracis. And they got it from soil, from what they call high-risk areas in Zimbabwe. Okay, and if you look at the significance of the project, they're pointing out that these soil samples were probably burial sites, could still be a source of Bacillus anthracis, okay, which could lead to new outbreaks. So it's benefiting, providing basic information on disease outbreaks. But this paper also outlined how the study was conducted, which is of course expected when you are publishing your research. And in that aspect, okay, anyone could get a hand in this information, and if they have, their bad mind, could replicate what the scientists did here to create cultures of Bacillus anthracis. And as you know, Bacillus anthracis remains a threat to health. No? So the CDC would has information about anthracis attack, or the threat of anthracis attack, so as a biological weapon. So these examples that I shown you are issues on ethical conduct of research, okay, that you need to consider when you're doing research studies. But there are, of course, other issues that we need to consider, and I'd like to share with you now some of these issues that you need to be aware of, okay, when you're doing research, and also when you're publishing your research output. So let's define what scientific misconduct be. No? So we need to understand that the scientific misconduct can damage your reputation. But the damage is not limited to your own reputation. It would also include damaging the reputations of all the people who are involved in that particular project. So whether it be your supervisor or your collaborators, it will have also an impact on your institution and the other institutions who are part of the project. And it would also have an impact on the academic or on the scientific community, right? So imagine you following a method that is derived from a fraudulent research. Of course, that would have an impact on your research as well, okay? So, and that's why you would see some articles wherein a researcher was accused of making dozens of experiments, okay, or researchers who failed to follow um, guidelines, or institutional guidelines. So, what are these examples of possible scientific misconduct? Okay, so we have talked about the ethical treatments of humans, which are governed by um, the declarations that I've earlier mentioned, and then we have talked about also the use of animals as model organisms for research. So some other ethical issues that we're going to talk about now here would be on authenticity and accuracy, right? So this publication and falsification, issues about originality, issues about authorship, and as well as conflict of interest. So this part now of my lecture will deal on issues related to publication of your research. Well, the previous study or previous examples were issues related to the conduct of experiment or the conduct of research. Now we're talking about publication ethics. So, what are these type of academic or scientific misconduct? So this could include cheating, publication, plagiarism, collusion, falsification, and fraud. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware of these terms, but let's define this term. Okay, so I have here a simple matching type. Okay, initially I thought you would be typing in your answer, but I cannot see your answer with my presentation, so I'll probably just give you a second or a few seconds to think about it. So let's identify the number for each of these items. For example, completing something for another person, what do you think it is? Cheating, fabrication, plagiarism, collusion, falsification, or fraud. Okay, so it's actually cheating. All right. Claiming other person's work or ideas to be one's own work would be plagiarism. So what do you think is that making up of statements or data? That would be fabrication. Presenting one's own work or idea as that of others, uh, that would be falsification. Permitted collaboration will be collusion. And breaking the rules of academic honesty would be fraud. All right, so I hope you were able to get all these things, these items correctly. So what is this? So what is fabrication? So fabrication is when you make up data or results, okay, and then you report them in your publication, in your manuscript, okay, or in your scientific presentation. So this is an issue of authenticity. There is no data available. You just simply come up with your own data out of nowhere and presented it to be your findings, okay? Falsification happens when you have data, all right? You have information. However, you decide to omit some items in your data that is not in agreement with the rest of your data. Okay, that's falsification. You are not presenting accurately what you have, what you got from your research. Or you simply manipulate your materials or even your equipment or your process. Okay, so falsification involves manipulating or omitting or changing. So it's an issue of accuracy. Okay, and here are some examples of individuals, okay, so who were accused and found guilty of scientific misconduct. Okay, so we have John Roland Darcy, who is an American physician and a biomedical researcher at Harvard Medical School, okay, in the US. And Dr. Darcy was found to be guilty of faking data. So there's no records of the project that he said he conducted. He said that he shows data, and when he was asked about the names of the hospitals where this data were gathered, he did not provide this information. He would claim that the information that he got were analyzed by people, okay, and he would provide names of these people, and it turned out that these people are not existing or not working in that particular in his laboratory. So these are basically examples of a scientific misconduct. And then we have Eric Paulman, who is a scientist involved in aging and obesity, a well published person. He has published more than 200 journal articles. However, they found out that 10 of his papers were publicated. And then he was also accused and found guilty of falsifying the preliminary data that he would include in his grant application. So he falsified about 17 grant applications. And in that grant application, of course, he got money. And so the government was saying that this guy received a lot of fundings based on fake or falsified preliminary information. Okay. And then we have Diederik Stapel, a Dutch social psychologist who was guilty of manipulating data or completely fabricating entire experiments. So Dr. Stapel would collect data from secondary schools where he said he has connections or he has affiliations. Uh, then he would enlist again unknown fictitious paid research assistants who are supposed to be the one doing collection of data. And then he would simply provide the data to his collaborators, and the collaborators will then analyze this data and they would then publish the findings. But when they would ask him about how the data, he would not provide information, or if his students would ask him if they are the one, if they can do the collection of the data, he would not allow them. He would simply tell them that if the students will do the collection of data in the schools, it would create some issues with the host institutions. And for that reason, he discouraged or he prevented his co-workers to actually do the collection data. So all the data simply came from him, and it was provided to his collaborators. His collaborators had no idea that the data that they're analyzing are actually not accurate or they are fabricated data. So what about these issues on originality? So there are three items here that I've listed. So republication, there is what we call salami science and simultaneous submission. And we're going to talk about this now. Let's start with the easiest one. We call it the simultaneous submission. What do we mean by this one? This is basically when you submit your paper into two journals or more at the same time. Okay. So for example, you have an article that you have written. This is an original research work. There's nothing wrong with your paper. There's nothing wrong with your research study. However, you thought, okay, I want to submit this in the journal Science, okay? But you feel that, of course, I'm not sure if Science will accept it. And since you know that the publication process can take longer, weeks to months, okay? So you said, okay, I will submit this also in another journal so that if in case Science rejects it, then I have another journal reviewing it. And in scientific community, this is not an accepted attitude. So you are not allowed to simultaneously submit your paper. So you could submit your paper to one journal, and if the paper rejects your journal, you are of course allowed to resubmit it to another journal, okay, as long as that paper is no longer being reviewed in that first journal, okay? And nowadays, when you are submitting paper, it's important or explicitly stated in your cover letter that your research, of course, is, aside from being original, it is also not being considered in any journal. So you have to confirm with the editor that your manuscript or any parts of your manuscript is not evaluated or being reviewed or not even published in another journal. Now, what do we mean by the salami science? I think you're familiar with salami. These are sausages. You cut them into thin slices, which of course you can use in your sandwiches. It is also called segmented publication. It happens when you publish two or more paper or articles on a single study. Okay, so you basically split your single study into several segments. These segments have that's what we call minimum publishable units. So it's generally acceptable. But since you wanted to have more publications, you wanted to have you submit this into different uh, journals. So each segment submitted into different journals. All right. So this salami or segmented publication is characterized by having very similar hypotheses, very similar methods, even results. But of course, the text is not similar since you are submitting it in a different journals or you have different segments. Okay. Now there is a gray area here because segmented publication is accepted at some point. All right. So when do we accept or when do we do this? When can we do this segmented publication? All right. It's okay to do this if you, for example, going to publish the same sample or same data sets, not exactly the same data sets, same data sets, but you are now analyzing it from a different perspective. So, for example, you have a similar patient sample, all right, and you get information here, um, and then based on epidemiological studies, and then you now publish this epidemiological point of view. But from the same sample set, you conducted another set of experiment. This time you work on some chemistry aspect, and now you're publishing this from the clinical chemist point of view. And that's allowed because you have two different uh, data sets here coming from the same sample set, right? It's also possible to have what we call follow-up investigation. And in this case, you need to publish parts of what is already published, okay? And this is also allowed given the fact that there must be new information that will contribute, that will be contributed by the new manuscript that you have. So for example, you conducted a study this year, okay, and then you have a follow-up investigation the year, let's say 5 years after this year, and then when you made that publication after the 5 years, you can then include a part of what you have published this year, okay? Because this will comprise the basic information that you need, no? that will serve as your point of comparison for your new publication, right? However, when you are doing the segmented publication, it's very important to inform the editor, no? When you submit your paper for publication about this previous publication, all right? You have to inform them that a part of the project was previously published or a segment of this was previously published in what journal, and then you need to justify to the editor why you are now publishing this set of information. What makes this new this manuscript? What is new in this new manuscript? Okay, so here it says that you need to describe properly the added value of your new manuscript. And if your new publication has new authors or has a different set of authors from the previous one, then you need to also inform the editor, okay, that you obtain consent from these previous authors, okay, before you publish your new paper. All right. Segmented publication is also allowed when you have a very large study. So, for example, you have a very large epidemiological study, and when you try to publish or squish in all the information or the large data that you gather from this study, it will just be chaotic. No? So you would end up having 50 pages, 50-page paper. Okay, and of course, many journals would not accept a 50-page paper. Okay, so in this case, you need to split up your publications into several papers to make it, be more focused on a specific item that you want to highlight, right? Segmented publication is also okay if you're doing a longitudinal studies. Okay, let me clarify it over what we call cross-sectional studies. So in cross-sectional studies, you are dealing with different sets of individuals. All right, for example, you wanted to um, study the impact of chewing gum. This is just a makeup study. The example is the impact of chewing gum into, let's say, non-smoker and smoker individuals, okay, or smoking individuals. So that would be a cross-sectional study. A longitudinal study would be, of course, looking at the impact of this chewing gum on one set, okay, let's say on the smoking population. And then you conducted study now, and then after some time, let's say after 2 years, you make another similar studies on the same population, right? In order for you to detect any changes in your observation. And in this case, you can have two separate publications, one in the initial, and then you will have another publication at the later period. Okay, so that's what we mean by longitudinal studies, right? But take note that many journals would always advise you not to unnecessarily divide your work, okay? Simply to come up with many related manuscripts. So it's really up to you as a scientist to decide whether you should publish a large paper or you should publish it into a segmented manuscripts. And then we have the issue of pre-publication, okay? And there are two items here that I'd like to, that will fall under republication. So first, let's contrast it with simultaneous submission. So in simultaneous submission, you basically have your new manuscript, submitted it to two different or more journals. In republication, you already publish your work, and then you want now to publish it again in another journal. And this is, of course, not allowed. All right. Once the paper is published in one journal, you cannot republish it in another journal. Okay. So, however, republication is allowed in some items or some exceptions. No, when 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 can you do this? For example, if you are publishing the same item or same paper in a different language. So, for example, you have your original publication written in the Chinese character, Chinese language, and not many people would be able to read that. And you decided to, of course, publish it in the English language. So this is, of course, permitted, provided that you inform the journal or the editors first that this is the case, that this is published in a different language and you're not publishing it in a new or in English language. Republication is also allowed for seminal articles or what we call landmark or classic papers. Okay, so it's not you who is doing this, it's the publisher who basically realized that, okay, a paper that is already published in their journal is considered a landmark paper. So how do we know it's a landmark paper? So for example, if you just simply Google this article, you will see that this paper has been cited many times. So if you look at this PDF or this topic, it was cited 4,000 times already. So this indicates that this paper has been a basis for many publications. All right. And so the journal could republish it in their websites. For example, the New England Journal of Medicine published this article in 2010. Okay, what is the value? What is value in healthcare? And then recently they have republished it in a different, format. Okay, but the same information. However, take note that the publisher would always indicate that this new publication was previously published, right? Now, there is also the item called duplicate publication. Okay, so this is, as what I mentioned a while ago, where you publish it in several journals. So it's already published, you publish it in another journal. And again, this is not allowed because in 1969, they have this what we call Ingelfinger rule. This is done by the New England Journal of Medicine. And the idea here is to protect the journals from publishing materials that's already been published, okay, and therefore have lost its originality. So you wanted to protect the journal from publishing papers that's already been published in another journal. So the journal would expect that the manuscript that you submitted to their journals is of course original and it's not been published anywhere else. All right. However, the Ingelfinger rule has been recently revisited by the New England Journal of Medicine. And for that reason, they made some exceptions. So what are these exceptions? So for example, if you presented your work in a scientific meeting, then it's not considered publication, and therefore your findings can still be published in a journal. Or your abstract is published in these conferences, seminar programs, then still, since you only have published the abstract, then this is not considered a full publication, and therefore you can still publish your paper in a journal, right? There are also cases wherein agencies like NIH, CDC, or any other public health authorities would require you to release your findings early. You have not yet published it, but because of public health concerns, they need you to upload the data, okay, or upload the information that you have found, okay, and then you want to publish it later, then you can still ask the journal, okay, to accept your paper for publications, given that even though they were pre-published in what to call this information provided by these agencies. Or if, for example, there were deliberations by Congress or FDA, obviously they will come up with reports from these deliberations. And this would include information that were derived from your research study. Okay, so this is considered now publication, but it can now be exempted since these are from governmental reports. What about conference proceedings? So many conferences would, publish papers that were presented in their conferences. Will this be considered as a publication? All right. In some conferences, they will only publish book of abstracts. So as I mentioned a while ago, if it's just simply a book of abstracts, then there's no problem. You can publish your manuscript in the journal. However, if the conference proceeding is, or if your research was submitted as a full paper and it was published as a conference proceeding, then it's no longer allowed for it to be published in a journal, because conference proceedings here are considered, especially if it's a peer-reviewed conference proceeding, as considered already as a publication. And there are organizations who would even publish their proceedings as books and therefore would merit now it as a valid publication. All right. Let's talk about authorships. Okay, so who would qualify now as an author in your publication? So there are 3 items that you need to consider in including your colleagues as part of your authors in your publication. So what are these 3 items? First, that person contributes significantly to the research. So these contributions could be either one of these. So they are involved in conceptualizing the project or designing how the project will be conducted. They are involved in collecting the data, in evaluating the data, or interpreting the data. So basically, these are the people who are have done experiments or design the project or the research study. No? But of course, there are cases that you hire someone to do the collection of data, okay, for you. that person may or may not qualify as an author. Okay, so when would that person qualify as an author? So if that person simply collected the data, okay, so you pay him to collect the data, then that person would not qualify as an author. It's an example of a paid job for him or her, and therefore he can simply be acknowledged. However, if that person who collected data made suggestions on how to collect that data, or made suggestions on what data to collect, and therefore made a significant contribution to the paper, then that person, although you have paid him or her, would qualify as an author of your paper. Okay? Now, second criteria, it's important that that person also is involved in the drafting of the manuscript. So basically writing the manuscript either at the beginning or during the revision of your manuscript, okay, before it is submitted to the journal. And the last item that you need to consider is that that person agrees, okay, agrees with the final version of the paper that you will submit to the journal for evaluation. Okay, so if all these three items are present, then that person will qualify as one of the co-authors in your publication. And this third item of agreeing is very important, no? Because when you submit a publication, okay, the journals would usually send information to the authors that a paper is submitted, and therefore uh, that person is identified as an author of the paper. Okay, because there are some issues here, like we call them your guest or gift or honorary authorship. These are person who are listed as co-authors but did not make any significant contributions. So for example, this person is the head of the institute and they were included in the author list simply because they are head of the laboratory where the project was conducted. So this is not acceptable. Or there's also the issue of ghost authorship. So someone who is part of the project, who have done significant work but was not included, okay, as one of the authors. And as I mentioned, it's important that these authors are aware of these manuscripts because journals would require you, okay, to diverge information that these um, uh, authors are aware of it. They will be receiving emails like this, as you have seen below, saying that the paper is been submitted and that you are one of the authors in that paper. And nowadays, many journals would require the contributions of the different authors. So they will ask you what would be your contributions. You would be listing them down, like conceptualization, doing the methodology, doing the analysis, doing the writing, even funding acquisitions would be listed here, and you would identify who are the people involved in this part of the research, right? And if you want to know more about issues and authorships, I would suggest that you go to this report. Again, you can just type in the title and then go to the COPE report in 2003, and you can learn more about how you can resolve issues related to authorship. Okay, what other issues? We have also what we call the conflict of interest. This is basically about funding or consultancies, okay, related to the work. So if, for example, you're doing a research project on the ill effects of smoking, and your funding agency came from tobacco companies, then there will be some conflict of interest there. But it's still okay if you will be getting funding from them. However, it has to be identified in your publication. So nowadays, journals will require you to inform them of the source of your funding. Okay. Aside from that, if the research would require informed consent or review, ethical review, therefore this has to be identified as well. And of course, you need to also indicate in your publication that there is no conflict of interest between you and, of course, between the funders who designed the funders who supported your research study. All right. So in order for us to avoid all this scientific misconducts, these are some helpful tips on how you can keep good scientific practice. So make sure that you collect your results well, and that you formulate this, can discuss this way so that others can easily understand them. Make sure that you save your results, publish your results, you confirm the authors, okay, or those who are involved in the authorship. You confirm the citations in your manuscript, and check whether the images that you will be using in your publications are copyrighted or these are original. Okay? Okay. So after this 10 minutes break, we proceed now with another, and I think very relevant ethical writing issue. So we have already discussed republication, or what we call duplicate publication. We discussed salami publication or data segmentation and simultaneous submission. So at this point, we're going to talk about the issue of plagiarism, okay, which is a very common mistakes that we would encounter when we are writing, of course, with our manuscript or publications. So how do we define plagiarism? So according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, basically plagiarism means you gather the ideas or words of another person or another publication, and then you present it to be your own. Okay, so this is done without crediting the source. So basically, you simply steal the information or the words or the ideas of that person and made it as if it is your information, or as if it's yours. So that is what we mean by plagiarism. And plagiarism has been also one of the main reasons why papers were protracted. So in the article that I mentioned to you a while ago, they listed down the articles or the percent of protections based on plagiarism. And you see here in 2011, about 40% of those retracted papers were based or because of plagiarized content. Okay, there was of course a decrease in the items, okay, retracted based on plagiarism the following year. And this is because journals started to utilize softwares that will detect plagiarism. So for example, there is this Authenticate, okay, a subscription-based solution, okay, where you could check whether the item that is submitted to you has been plagiarized or copied from other publications without, proper citations. There's also what we call Turnitin. This is often used by higher education. You can again use this online platform to detect whether the assignment submitted by the students or the research report or paper submitted, or even essay submitted by your students, is actually copied from other publications or other previously items. Okay, so these people from Turnitin come up with this white paper on the plagiarism spectrum, and they identified two simple criteria in order for you to detect or to say that an item is actually plagiarized or not. So the first question that you should ask yourself is that work actually the author's own work or own creation or own words? If the answer is yes, then there's no problem. If the answer is no, then you proceed now to the second question. And did the author cite the source of that information if it's not from his own work or her own work? Okay. If the answer again is yes, the author cited the references or the source, then again, we don't have any problem. But if the author did not cite the source, then clearly that item is plagiarized. Okay, an issue of plagiarism. So there are 10 types of plagiarism according to this article, and they listed down from 1 to 10, 10 being the most uh, what they call this, the one with the highest level, you want to say it. No? So one, they call it the clone, which is basically submitting another work and then claiming it to be your own. So you basically just simply change the name or remove the name of the previous author and replace it with your own. That is what we mean by clone. And then there's also what we call the control C, wherein a portion or let's say a paragraph of the previous paper were copied and then you place it into your own manuscript. Okay, without identifying the source of that particular paragraph or that particular section of the manuscript. And then there is also the what we call the find and replace. You basically copy the paragraph and then you simply remove or replace some of the words there with a new items so that it will now not appear to be the same item, which still again a case of plagiarism. Okay, to give an example of this find and replace, I have here an example of an introduction in one of our paper, and the item here is substrate. And in this field, we also have another term for substrate, which is basically microhabitat. So what you do is simply remove this substrate term and replace it with microhabitat. So it's just a very crude example, but that is what we mean by find and replace. So you replace some key items or keywords in the paper with some other similar words, and then you claim it to be a different item. Again, that's a case of plagiarism. And then there is what we call remix, or in this case, you paraphrase information from other sources, and then you seems to put them together. Okay, so it appears now to be original, but when in fact it's just a paraphrasing of other sources. There is a case of recycling. This is also called self-plagiarism, which means that you copy your own work or your own information or your own write-up, okay, that's already published, and then you use it now in your new manuscript without informing or without citing your previous publication. Okay, and then there is this hybrid wherein you copied passages from cited sources, okay, but you did not provide them proper citation, and then you put them in your paper. Mash up is when you mix materials from different sources, again, without proper citations. An error, or for error here, is when you write a paper, okay, but you include citations. However, these citations are inaccurate or non-existent, okay? And then we have the aggregator, which simply include all informations, no? From different sources. You cited these different sources in that, but you simply cut and paste them and put them together or aggregate them together. And the last one is what we call retweet. You have here proper citation, but again, you exactly copied everything from the paper. Okay, so these are some examples of or types of plagiarisms that you would probably encounter in publications. So how do we prevent plagiarism? Okay, there are two tips here, or three tips that I could share with you. First is plan well your paper. So if you are a student, make sure that you discuss your paper with your supervisor. Make sure that you have a listing of all the resources or the sources that you use in your paper. If possible, jot down or take down notes, items that you have copied directly, so that you know which items you could put in quotation marks, and provide the full bibliographic entry for that particular items that you have copied, right? And then when you write your paper, make sure that you cite them. And when you are in doubt, always just put the citation, okay? Be clear who said what, okay, in your paper. And also learn how to paraphrase the information that you gather from previous publications, so that you will not be accused of just simply copying them, right? And there are a lot of literatures now, managing literature softwares now. Some of them are with subscriptions, like the EndNote, but there are literature managing systems like Mendeley, which you can actually download and install into your computer, for free. Okay. And then, of course, you need to learn how to paraphrase the information that you read from journal articles. For example, this is a poem about philosophy, no? And this is an example on how you could paraphrase the information you got from this. Okay. There is also an item here from Charles Darwin, okay, which states that to kill an error is a good a service as, or sometimes even better, than establishing a new truth or a fact. And if you will be asked to paraphrase this, which do you think would be the one closest to it from these four items here? So I give you time to think of what you think would be the best item to reflect this information if it will be paraphrased from in a paper. Okay, so I hope you have your choice now, and I hope that your choice is letter C, which is the best item that will really tell the same information from this. All right. It's also important to use properly the images that you will use in your paper. You need to indicate the source of your images if it is not your original image. Okay, if you want to include that as one of your figure, and you need to observe this the copyright of these images. So more often, when an image is uh, publish, the copyright now posts with the journal, and therefore you need to inform also the journal or ask permission from the journal if you'll be reusing these images, even though these images were actually your original images. All right, so it's important for you to still ask your journal if you can use the image that you have and then use it in another paper. All right, and if you will make some changes on the images, okay, let's say your original images or images coming from other sources, you also have to indicate what are those changes. Okay, if it came from archives, you have to inform also the source of your image or the archives where you got these images. So let's try this. What do you think is the accurate or not accurate representation of this image with this term? So it's a cappuccino with dent blanche. Dent blanche is actually a mountain in Switzerland, if I'm not mistaken. And you have here a cappuccino cup. All right. So if you look at these four images, basically they are the same. Okay. But there is one item here which is not a reflection of this title, cappuccino with a dent blanche. So I give you a minute, or not a minute, but few seconds to think about which you think is not a proper, which is not a reflection of the citation or the item here. Okay. So I hope you have your choices now. Basically, it's letter B, all right, which is not an accurate representation here. So if you look at item A here, you see the cappuccino, all right, cup, and you see the mountain, the dent blanche mountain. So this is the same as what is listed in the title. Letter C is also the same, although you see the cappuccino being small and the mountain also being small. So you basically zoom the information or the figure here or the image here, but you still see the mountain, you still see the cappuccino. So it's still an accurate one. And that is also true with letter D, okay? Although you change the image from colored into, let's say, a sepia type or a monochromatic image, still the same. You still have the cappuccino and you still have the mountain. But if you look at item B, I'm going to remove it now. You don't see anymore the mountain, you see the cappuccino. And therefore, it's not a reflection of the title. So you have to be very careful when you're trying to represent the title and the image in your figures. And plagiarism has serious consequences, and therefore it's very important for you to really consider, to look at it, or think about it when you are writing your manuscript. For example, there is a German defense minister who was accused or found to be guilty of plagiarizing his dissertation. So 29 counts of plagiarism in his in his dissertation, and for that reason, he actually resigned from his post because of that. Right. So I think these are the references or additional sources that you could look at. Okay, and with this, I would now end my presentation. So these are some disclaimers and acknowledgement regarding the photos that I've used in these presentations. And thank you very much for your time. And I'll be happy now to answer your questions.
Yes. So to begin with, the latest question that was posed by Shayanti Mandal. So she asks, can BSc students who contribute significantly to a review article become authors of the paper?
Yes, and the answer to that question is definitely yes. As long as that person has contributed significantly to the work, no, to the research, to the writing up, then BSc students, even high school students, if they have significant contributions, can be considered as author of that paper. So many of our publications, for example, in our group, are co-authored by our undergraduate students because these are their own research study. They also participated in writing the manuscript.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So the second question is from Mubashir Raza, and the writer asks that is master's or PhD thesis a valid publication, especially in case of novel species if those are unpublished but included in the thesis.
Okay, thesis and dissertations are research studies that you can convert into publications. So what I mean by that, so you can of course submit them into journals like MycoAsia if you are doing research on fungi, and this will be of course evaluated, but you have to package it to follow the format of the journals. So you cannot just simply send them a copy of your thesis and tell them, okay, publish it. So you really have to package it according to the guidelines of the journal, and they can be considered, of course, as they can be considered for publication after the peer review process has been done. Okay, so it's possible to submit your thesis and dissertations for publications, and that's what many universities would want, that the thesis of the students are submitted for publications. And this is because thesis and dissertations would often, be locked in your libraries. And if those libraries do not have online databases, then the only person who could access them are the people in your university, of course. Therefore, it's cannot be like a universal information given to everyone. Okay. All
Okay,
right.
thank you. In continuation with this, I had a question. Since you're talking about thesis and dissertations, say for example, an author has already published the data in. So I'm specifically, talking about social science research. So an author has already published the data in a peer-reviewed journal, right? And while writing her dissertation, she has also referred to those papers where the data is published, right? So, I mean, as far as the content is concerned, the content has been, paraphrased so to avoid plagiarism. But then when it comes to the tables or, in qualitative research, like we conduct interviews. So we take, those direct snippets from those interviews. So those cannot be paraphrased. So will that be considered as plagiarized material for the thesis?
I think as long as you cite them, then it will not be a problem. Okay.
Okay.
In Europe, for example, they have this. Well, I think you are all aware of the traditional format of thesis and dissertations, where you have your introduction, your review of related literature, your methodology, results and discussion, and those things. All right. But in other universities, like in Europe, they have what we call cumulative work. All right, wherein the thesis or the dissertation of the student will comprise of the publication itself. So
Absolutely.
it's specifically what they would do is they have one chapter for the introduction. Chapter 2 will be paper 1. Chapter 3 will be paper 2. Chapter 4 will be paper 3, and so on. And then you will have another chapter for conclusion. And those papers, those chapters with papers are basically either a copy of the publication or the publication itself. So sometimes they will do that, okay? And these are submitted as a dissertation format. And in this case, it's okay because, again, as I've said, these are cited. Now, in case that you will be writing a traditional dissertation format, meaning you don't have your publication, but you are citing papers that you already published, okay? And you are including them in, in your dissertation work because that publication is part. Okay, I think it's okay as long as you inform or you write that this information were derived from your own previous study, right?
Okay, so
And I
you
think
submit
many universities now, for example, in our university, if you want to get your PhD degree, you will be required to publish your work first before you submit your dissertation. So in that case, uh, obviously what you are submitting or as part of your dissertation has already been published in in a journal. Okay, so what we usually do is that we provide the information that we gathered, and then we cite the paper, and then at the appendices we also attach a copy of the paper. Okay, so to inform the reader that, okay, this paper has already been published. And for us, it's even better if you publish your work before, because it means that your project has been scrutinized by other researchers in your field. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So this is actually in relation to the second situation, what you said. I mean, it's mostly a paper-based thesis where you only write the general introduction and the review of literature, followed by your individual work that you have already published. So thank you very much. Okay, so Sabitra Pradhan has a question. Can we republish the part of the information in another country because it is important and new to that part of the world?
Again, I mentioned a while ago, there are certain guidelines on what you can actually republish. Okay, so if, for example, you have written this paper in English and you publish it in a journal in your country, and then you decide to publish it in a more international journal, then this is not accepted. This is because it's already published in that journal. However, it is like if you've written your paper in, let's say, in your language, all right, and that language is deeper, is that, the more common language, particularly if those languages have their own characters, and then you will be publishing it in another journal, then in English this time, then I think it will be acceptable, provided that you inform the editor about it. So it's actually the editor who will decide whether this is okay or not for them. All right. So it's very important to be open to the editor when you are submitting the manuscript that, okay, I have this paper that we wanted, and this is published in Chinese and character, and nobody is reading our paper because they don't speak Chinese, all right, or they don't understand the Chinese language, and therefore we wanted it to be published because we in English, because we have a very important information that we wanted to share. So again, the editor will decide, okay, this is okay, we will accept your paper. But I think even if it's accepted like that, the editor will still inform, or it will still note in your publication that this is already published in another journal in another language. All right. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Moving on to the next question, Mr. Debashish Samal has a question. Can we publish the data from a different place or area where research is not conducted?
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to understand the question. Can we publish the
Yes,
data for a different?
good afternoon, madam.
Good
Yeah,
afternoon.
good that you are here.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, you can explain your question well.
Yes, 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 yes. My question is, I am from a medical field. Okay, I am from a medical college. So generally, the contractual people in medical colleges, they become changes their places by the government or private, etc. So they are changing their colleges. So suppose now I am posted on X medical college, and I have done a study on a bacteria or any pathogen. So I got the data. So my point is, I have the data. If I got changed to another place or another medical college, either in the same state or another state. Okay. So whether can I use that data for that type of research in that area?
Okay, yeah, now I understand your question.
That
I was
question.
thinking I was thinking before that you are publishing a data coming from a different uh, research area. So that's well,
No.
if that is what you're thinking, that's fine. If since it's a different area, you can of course publish that information because it's not yet published and it's a new area. But now I think your question is more on affiliation. All right. So your question is an affiliation. So you did a project in one university, and then you move into another university where you now start to write the manuscript. Okay.
Yes.
So how do we do this? Okay, I think there's no problem at all if you want to publish it in that. Okay, the thing is, which institution will you now use as your application? All right. Personally, what we would do is, like, for example, I did my dissertation in Germany. All right.
Yes.
So my research was conducted in Germany, but when I published some parts of my dissertation, all right, I am no longer affiliated with my university because I'm already done with my study. Okay, so for example, in my dissertation, we come up with 3 papers. All right, I published the 2 papers during the time that I was in my university. So I included my affiliation is my university where I'm studying. And then I went back to my home university. And then while at home, I was working, I'm doing already, I wrote again another publication. And then you can discuss it with your advisor. Okay, in this case, I talk with my advisor if I can include my my new institution now in my publication. And if your co-authors agrees with that, then you can, because simply you did it while you are in that new university. However, you should not exclude the previous institution as your institution. So in my case, I would put 2 institutions and my name. All right, my institution where I did the project and my new institution. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
There are also instances that, for example, in my case, I did the project in Germany, and
Yes.
when I was publishing it, I'm affiliated with an institution, but I'm also affiliated with my home university. All right. Okay. So in that case, I was thinking, should I include my university because my university is supporting my study?
Yes.
So in that instances, I decided not to. But I'm okay. It's okay if I wanted to, because of course I got support from my university, and I'm still part of that university. And some people will do that. And that's fine. It's not a problem.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So the
There are also cases. Okay. There's this third case. For example, you did the project in University A. All right. And then you're now affiliated with University B. Okay. In this new university, you um, you submit now your paper. You could also submit it in this way. You will submit your paper, and your affiliation will only be University A because the project was done in University A. All right. So in your let's say you have your title, you have your name, and then after that you will have the affiliation, right, in publication. And what is listed there is University A, because that is where you did your project. However, you will see there were some items, for example, in the journal where they will tell you where you are affiliated, and you can write there also your present affiliation. Okay, so that now you are part of University B, and you're no longer affiliated with University A. So your University B is not part of the byline for the affiliation, but there is some information in the journal where it states that your current affiliation is now University B, and if they want to contact you, they will contact you through University B and not through University A. So those are options that you can think of when you are publishing your work from a different place.
Yes,
Okay?
I got the point. Matlab, you just mean that if university allows us, so we can use the data by affiliation.
Yes,
So
yes.
affiliation, we can
Yeah.
keep both the universities in our pipeline by publishing. Okay, sir.
Yeah,
There is
actually,
another.
that's the easiest way. The easiest way is to use both of them, since when you are in a new university, you're also contributing something to the project because you're writing during
Yes,
that
sir.
time. You're probably reanalyzing your data also when you are
Yes.
affiliated in the new university. So the solution is simply to put them together, and that's fine. Okay, your issue is really not a big issue for publications. Not really a major concern. Yeah, it can easily be resolved. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank you.
for that questions. Yeah.
Yes, Shanti, you may unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hello. Yeah.
Yes. Hello.
Yeah, sir, it's a great presentation, and I'm actually starting my career. So I have a lot of questions. I have two questions. Like, I have already published a paper. I'm an author in that, and I have put a self-drawn image in it. Look, like using a bio-ed. So, can I use some part or a portion of that image in my second paper? Okay, I can give you an example. It's a abiotic stress paper related to cytokinin, and I have drawn an image regarding abiotic stress and its interaction with the cytokinin molecule. So I have a second publication I have a second review where I'm writing abiotic stress, but it is with different phytohormones. So can I pick the abiotic stress image part and put it with the phytohormones? So my image now is completely changed, but will it count into plagiarism, or is it unethical to do these kind of things?
Okay. So there are many ways by which we could look at this now. Okay. First, probably I will just give you all the examples so that you can decide later on what would be appropriate for you. You have an image, okay, in your paper, and you publish it, and you want to use it in another paper. Okay, the same image, exactly the same image that you draw. All right. So if that is the case, that's allowed. Okay, you can use it in your new publication, completely the same exact image. However, before you do that, you have to write to the publisher and telling them that you will be using the image that you use, and you have to ask permission. And the new journal will also ask you the permission. All right, I will be asking that permit from you. So you have to inform the new journal. Okay, this image is published in journal A, and now I'm publishing it in journal B. And here is the permit from journal B allowing me to publish it in my new paper. Okay, so that's very important. You need to get the permit from the journal. Okay, in order for you to do that, because when you submit your paper for publication, you are actually transferring all your rights to the journal, and therefore the journal will be the one who has the control over those images. Okay. It's also advisable that in your new paper you will also cite where you got this original paper. Okay, so it's not just copying it and putting it in your publication and getting permit, it's also important that you will cite where you got the information,
Okay.
so that you will not be accused of plagiarizing it, because you tell them, okay, I got this image from my previous paper, I got permit, and now you also tell them that, okay, this is where I got it. Okay, this is the source. All right. Now the second scenario is that you get this original image, all right, and now you are modifying it. Okay, so you get a portion of that image. This is your own image, and then you modify it by adding some other components that you have not included. My take on this is this: is now the image that you have created very different from the previous image.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
If it is very different from the previous image, then I think it's original because it's different. No,
Okay.
it's new. All right, so there's no problem. You can now use that particular image, and I think it's best. So if you want to avoid this kind of problem, what I would suggest is to create a new image, or a new image based from what you have now. So it will now be our original image because that coming from the previous one, if it's possible.
Okay.
Now there is also possibility that, okay, I cannot make a new image because I need those particular image from the previous one, but I need to change a portion of it. Okay, and in that case, I will, for example, you have your schematic diagram in your image, and then in your previous schematic diagram, there is a picture there of the biotic stress.
Okay.
Okay, and now you are replacing that same diagram with abiotic stress. So basically, you just revise a portion.
Okay.
So first of all, you need, again, for me personally, I would, to be safe, I would ask permission again from the journal. All right, that I will be modifying your image, and you will be using it in another publication. That's the safest. All right. Second, when you write your paper, you tell them that this paper is a modification of a previous image.
Okay.
All right. So instead of saying, let's say this is your title A, B, C, D, and then you will put a open and close parentheses, image modified from your paper. So this tells now the reader that the image is semi-original. Okay. It means that it's not completely new, but a modification of a previous image. But it's not completely a copy of the previous image. All right?
Yes.
So those are things that you can consider. But again, for me to be safe is to really ask the publisher that you will be doing this and they will be making a new publication out of this. Can you ask them? I mean, many journals would simply say, yes, you can. So it's not a problem, given the fact that you are also a co-owner of that image because you prepared it.
Okay.
All right?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much for your nice presentation. Thanks a lot for your good interactions. My doubt is, due to some unexpected reasons, unforeseen reasons, the student, that is scholar, hasn't completed her research work for the past 7 years. Is it possible by us to present now the complete data? It means publications part.
So it means that it took years for the student to finish it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, actually, I have a very interesting experience on that one, because there is this question that you did this project 10 years ago, but you have not published the data 10 years ago. All right? Can you still publish it after 10 years? Okay, so, and I asked a senior professor that I know, because I'm also having doubts. Can I still publish old data, okay, that I've done many years ago? So in your case, it took 7 years, so it's really a long time. And my professor asked me this gave me this question: is there a expiration date for data? And it made me really think, do you really have expiration date for data? Does it mean that your data can only be used, let's say, for 1 year, and after that, just like food, no, if it's expired, you just simply throw it away? Now, my take on this is this, no? If you think that the data is relevant and still have not changed, okay, according to the current findings or current information, then by all means, you can still publish it. Okay? You really just have to rethink or reevaluate your data. Maybe this time you need to add additional statistical analysis based on what is the current statistical analysis for that particular data, so that you can still see whether what you have is still valid or not.
Okay.
All right. So that's what I would advise on you. So you decide first whether you think that your information or the information that you're going to share from your research now is still valid. Okay, because science is changing. Okay, information is changing. So maybe what you have learned from that study previously is no longer accepted, because there are other studies now that have proven that your information is not no longer accurate. So for me, what's the point of publishing it? Your reviewers will point out, okay, this is not anymore accepted, or this is no more valid. But if your work is still valid, I mean, content-wise, then by all means you can still publish it.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
But I would also advise you, when you do this kind of stops, you inform them, when was the data collected? Okay, so if it's a biomedical research, you can say, okay, we collected the data in 2010, and it's only now that we are publishing it. Okay, so it's important to be honest in your paper. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm just checking some questions. There is a question here. Can the publisher use the image we have submitted for the paper in another publication? So I don't quite understand the question here. Savitra, would you like to clarify? If you're still here.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you so much for your presentation, and I'm so thankful for this platform. Basically, I would like to know, because sometimes we submit our photographs with the paper that we want to publish, and then the publisher or whoever, the printing press, I have seen they have reused our photographs in some other forms, like in pamphlets or whatever. So are they allowed to do, or is there that we have some rights on the photographs that we have submitted?
Okay. This is the reason why it's very important to read the guidelines of the journal. All right? Because in the guidelines of the journal, they will tell you who owns the copyright of the images. All right? So there are journals that say that it's a joint ownership of the images. That means the author and the publisher will own it. But then there are cases that the journal will require you to transfer the copyright to them. And if you transfer the copyright and if you sign a form, then they can eventually use it for whatever purpose that they need it. So they would sometimes use your image for front page of the journal, or when they publish what they call information in their website, they will use your images. Okay.
Actually, basically, it's not used by the publisher. I mean, they have shared to the other individuals. Is that right?
You mean shared it? What do you mean by shared it? Give it to other individuals?
Yes, I give
and
it
the
to
other individuals.
Other individuals have used it, and when I asked them, they have said that they have got from the publisher that we have submitted the photographs.
I think I've not encountered any issues on this one, but maybe you can ask the publisher. Again, check if the full rights now with the publisher. But were you cited? Were you be acknowledged as the source of the?
No, not me, and not my institute.
I think you could raise this issue with the publisher and tell them why Well, I don't see any problem them sharing the images if the copyright was given to them. What I'm concerned is why were you not cited as the source of that images? That's my concern. For me, that's more important concern, because if that images is identified from your publication, the publisher should at least inform the other authors that this came from this paper, and therefore your paper should have been cited as the source of that images. So maybe this is something that you can discuss with the publisher, why they were not cited. Okay, because to me that's more important concern.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. All right.
I think
Do we have any other question?
we can take up probably one last question that's posted in the chat, and that is from Home Khativada. Is there any time limit to publish articles from the date of work?
Honestly, there's no time limit, but the earlier that you submit your manuscript after you have done your work, the better. Okay, this is because there are cases that you have done, let's say, a breakthrough research. All right, so this is something new, and then you don't realize that there are other laboratories who are doing that, probably doing the same thing. And then if you wait for 1 year or 2 years before you publish your work, maybe this other laboratory have already published it, and in that case, you can no longer claim to be the first one to have done this particular work. Okay, so to me, the earliest possible time, the better. Okay, so don't wait for years for you to really prepare your paper for publication. Okay, so MycoAsia, for example, we don't have deadlines for submission, no, right? Am I correct? So we don't have any deadlines, so you can submit it anytime, because there are journals that they accept, of course, regularly, no, articles, but they assign when the paper will be published. For example, I have experience. We submitted a paper in one journal, and it got accepted, I think, December or November of 2021. Okay, we submitted it as early as May. It was accepted, I think, sometime towards the last year. Okay, but they told us that they will not publish it immediately, and they assigned my journal or my paper in the April issue of the journal. So I have to wait until April before my paper is published, although it's already been accepted several months before. Okay, but there are journals who would immediately publish your work as long as it is accepted. Okay, like MycoAsia, when you submit it today, and then after 1 month, it's already been accepted, then they will immediately publish it. Okay, so many journals would usually do that. There are journals also who would not yet publish your work, but they will already announce it to be in press. So they have an in-press version of the paper. So it's already considered a publication, and people can already cite it, could already read it and cite it. But the official publication will come later, and that also happens. Okay.
Hello,
Okay.
sir.
Yeah, you have questions, Sina?
Yes, sir. Hello, Dr. Smina. I have a question. Sir, if we are writing a report or writing a thesis, and if I change the words, do I still have to cite the source?
You changed what? The verb?
Yes, sir. I'm taking some material from any website and I'm rephrasing it, and then I have to cite it.
For me, as long as you got it from another information, you cite it. That's the safest, so that you will not be accused of plagiarizing. Even if you paraphrase it, even if you repackage what was written in that word into your own words, you still have to cite it, because it's not originally your work. It came from somebody else. So you have to cite it so that you will not be accused of plagiarism.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.